Good afternoon, Dr. Norwood. Big data analytics is the newest trend in data analysis and has many uses across all industries. It is a particularly effective tool in monetizing data, that is, turning large sets of data into usable statistical information that firms can use to profit from. In the case of the food industry, big data can also be used to improve food safety and help firms keep better track of their supply chains. As I said, big data in the food industry could be used to help improve food safety, help producers track foodborne illness and contamination outbreaks should they occur, and also help prevent new outbreaks by learning from old outbreaks. The food industry has many uses for big data, the first of which is weather data applications, which is using weather data and weather patterns to find correlation between certain weather patterns and food poisoning and contamination outbreaks. There's also Twitter tracking, which is using a system with a trained algorithm that sorts Twitter data and uses it to find, with a GPS location, the beginnings of a food poisoning outbreak. There's also predictive analytics based on past outbreaks, which would be very similar to using a value at risk function for an investment bank. And finally, meat animal tracking, which is simply tracking meat animals down the supply chain. By using data from the National Weather Service and the Weather Channel, food service providers could predict what areas of the United States and their supply line would be at risk for foodborne illnesses and contamination. This could take several forms, such as knowing how hot a shipping container might get if a meat shipment was sent to Atlanta in the summertime versus a northern city like Bismarck, North Dakota. Not only could this data help suppliers cut costs by allowing them to know how cold to keep their shipments and therefore how much energy it would require, it would also allow them to make sure the food was constantly kept at a safe temperature during the trip, thereby reducing the risk of foodborne illness becoming a problem. Weather data could also be used to forecast the risk for contamination. For example, if it's an unusually dry season in the state of California, pests like rabbits might, be more likely to come into lettuce crops for food. This in turn increases the risk for contamination from the pest waste. Knowing when contamination is more likely to occur would allow the food industry to take extra precautions and also allow them to uphold their high quality standards. This same data could be used to predict when people would be most likely to come into contact with high risk foods. For instance, in the summer when people are eating more fresh vegetables and grilling outdoors, there's a risk that they might not wash the vegetables properly and could undercook the meat. Knowing when these foods are at a higher risk would allow producers to take extra precautions in preventing the need for reputation damaging recall. It could also allow them to add labels onto their packaging for warnings, making sure that they had warned the customers and preventing them from being liable. There are also alternative uses for weather data. Weather data could be used to target seasonal product advertising to consumers. For example, if on the first hot day of June in Oklahoma City, an ad could be run on smartphone apps or on the internet to advertise cold beverages or water parks such as icy drinks from 7-Eleven or, in the case of Oklahoma City, Whitewater Bay. Twitter data is now becoming increasingly useful. A new system on the market that is of particular interest to the food industry is the Nemesis system. The Nemesis system was developed by the University of Rochester and works by using a trained algorithm to sort Twitter data and watch for signs of a food poisoning case. Not only does it find the case, but thanks to Twitter users tweeting mostly from GPS-enabled smartphones and other GPS-enabled devices, it allows suppliers to know the immediate area of the problem. This could be of great use to the food industry. Say if a supplier such as Cargill Meat knows that they supplied all the ground beef to all the Chili's restaurants in Oklahoma, and then Nemesis found a tweet about someone getting ill from eating at a Chili's in Tulsa, they would be able to take early action and do an internal investigation and send someone to investigate before a potential outbreak caused a USDA demanded recall or got too far and hurt a lot of people. Predictive analytics is also useful could also be useful to the food industry. Big data can be applied to predictive analytics, much like a firm on Wall Street uses predictive analytics to find its value at risk. A food producer might use a similar method to predict how and when new outbreaks of foodborne illnesses might occur, using old data to predict the future. Attempt to predict the future. Using a software like Hadoop, developed by Yahoo, that allows many different computers and servers to pool their combined information, a food producer might then find there are common themes and patterns behind past food poisoning outbreaks, and then take steps to prevent them from happening in the future. Allowing a firm to pool data easily from its many departments would also allow for new perspectives on safety and possibly find ways to cut costs and eliminate waste. The data used might include weather patterns like we had talked about in the previous slide, making sure that the age of the food on shelves isn't too far gone and eliminating the risk of foodborne illness there, and also keeping track of their supply chain and making sure there isn't a flaw. Meat animal tracking would be especially useful to the meat industry because there are so many animals running through feedlots that it's hard to keep track of every individual animal. Though tracking the progress of the meat animal down the production line isn't easy, it could be made easier by the use of big data analytics, and meat producers would be able to keep track of the herd's immunizations and veterinary history, allowing them to prevent disease from an oversight in immunization. And it would also allow them to pinpoint the source of an outbreak and recall all meat products from animals that were at risk from being in close proximity to the source of an illness, if the illness source was to be found. There are many other uses for big data outside of the food industry. In fact, one might argue that every industry could benefit from big data analysis. Customer service industries might benefit from something very similar to the Nemesis program by using social media to aid in their customer service. The financial industry might be able to more accurately measure customer default risk, which is a real problem, especially in smaller banks. And this concept of big data isn't only for large firms. As it turns out, there are smaller consulting firms and internet businesses devoted solely to providing big data analytics services to smaller companies. Medical professions could use this to determine at-risk patients by referencing their patients' histories with known risk factors, and agencies like the Center for Disease Control might be able to use big data analysis to prevent disease outbreaks and also better prepare themselves for potential outbreaks should they occur. E-commerce companies such as eBay and Amazon might find that using big data analytics to analyze their customers would show them who they might be able to sell higher value products to, and also allow them to possibly open up a new market to customers who normally wouldn't buy things that they sell but are constantly looking at their site. One way that a customer service industry might be able to use social media data is to mine the data for complaints related to the firm's products. Say if Apple releases the new iPhone, then they could take a system such as an adapted Nemesis platform and use it to bring up results of people having problems with their product, and then they could see if there was a pattern and then more quickly fix the problem instead of having to use a slower method such as internet forums or consumer reports. The financial industry would have a great deal of use for big data analysis, especially when it comes to banking and customers defaulting on loans. The Zest Cash system is a system that pulls data from customers, such as their bill payment history, their length of stay at one residence, credit card histories, and allows lending institutions to more accurately determine a customer's likelihood of defaulting instead of just relying on credit scores and their own intuition. It would allow them to better assess the risk. Like I said before, big data analytics isn't only for really large companies. BigML, ML standing for machine learning, is a company based in Corvallis, Oregon, and it allows anyone who has a data set that they would like to have processed upload their data for a price. They'll break it down and put it into data sets for them, and then produce what are called decision trees that allow companies to have that data in a usable form. This is relatively inexpensive, especially compared to having a full-on analytics department for a small company, which could be very expensive. This BigML works on a credit system and charges 1 cent per credit, although 1 terabyte of data is over 1 million credits. That's still only $1,000 per terabyte of data, as opposed to having to have all the hardware and all the expertise in your own department. The medical industry could have a lot of use for data analysis. I mean, the way the country's going, more and more people are needing medical care and seeking medical care. Hospitals' patient data could potentially be put to use to be projected against known risk factors to help doctors see who is at risk for a certain disease and may need to see another doctor, and that would allow for a smoother transition through the medical system and eliminate some of the cost we associate with the medical system today. Big data analysis could also be used to prepare for outbreaks. It would allow the Center for Disease Control to predict how a disease might react by advanced statistical analysis and better prepare them to defend the country against one if it were to occur. E-commerce companies have a great deal of use for big data analysis. They're one of the leading suppliers of big data in the country right now. Amazon.com uses an app that they send people into. People will go into the store and take pictures and scan barcodes for them, and this allows them to have a leg up on mortar and brick stores. This could also be used. Big data could also be used by e-commerce retailers to identify upsell targets by using the customer data and their previous history and products they bought in the past. If they see that a customer has been looking at mid-level items but has always bought high quality, more expensive items in the past, they might suggest items that live up to the standards that they're used to and maybe be able to upsell them that way. They also might be able to use it the opposite direction and be able to get a customer who never buys anything but always looks at like high-level items but can't afford it. They might suggest that they buy an item that is more in their price range and therefore generate more revenue for themselves and hopefully more profit. In conclusion, big data analytics is the future of business. It's going to revolutionize the way that we do business. It's going to be everywhere, whether we like it or not, probably, and hopefully it remains ethical. It applies to all industries. It's an excellent consulting tool. It allows for infinitely new